incubator. And, we are not starting just quite yet, but we do have our speaker, Asha Abraham, with us. We're just going to wait a few minutes for the crowd to fully come in. But in the meantime, me and Asha will just do some small talk to catch up. So Asha, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Like I was saying before, it's Wednesday. So
yes.
Halfway there.
Yes, halfway there. So while we're waiting for the crowd to roll in, maybe we could just start with, what have you been reading lately? Any good books?
I knew you'd ask me that. That's what I'm reading now. It's a book about using humor to kind of influence and impact your space.
Okay,
And I could always use some.
That's interesting. And what have you picked up from that book so far?
It's like you don't have to be a stand-up comedian. You can just work off of things, I guess, cues, right? And it could be stories, personal stories too, just to kind of break the ice.
Okay.
Again, I've just started reading it, but it doesn't have to be as intimidating as I thought it was. It seems very assuring.
Yes. So would you say that's a book for relationship building, right? Like relationship with clients and stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah. And it can be used personal or professional lives, anywhere that, humor works, which is everywhere, right?
Yes. I think we're all human beings and we all like to laugh. So that makes sense.
Easiest way to connect, I would think too.
For sure. And anything good you've been watching on Netflix or anything like that? Any good shows, any good movies, documentaries?
So I have two boys, 12 and 14, and my husband got them into superheroes. I think the last show we watched was some superhero thing. It was WandaVision. Yeah, WandaVision.
Yes, WandaVision. I haven't watched that show, but I did see a lot of people talking about it. I know it's on Amazon Prime.
Yes. We binge watch it in like 2 nights, I think.
Oh my God, that's so good. That's good family time.
Yeah. Weekends, like Fridays and Saturdays, are like movie nights, family movie nights for us.
That's good. I love that. That's great. Strong family unit. For the new people who just came into the room, we are just doing some small talk as we're letting the crowd roll in. So let's just give it another 5 minutes before we get the talk really started. And I guess, I know we have you here talking about cybersecurity, not really getting into the talk, but I'm just curious, how has COVID, the pandemic, how has that maybe affected your business and stuff like that in the last maybe couple months, past year or so?
Well, I have to say that a lot of the clients that we've worked with, most recently too, I see a lot of resilience, and a lot of them were focused on the digital transformation kind of initiatives, right? They're trying to kind of digitize their business models to sustain their operations and preserve the revenue streams that they have going, right? So it was about digitizing their business offerings, and more recently, I think most of last year was spent kind of doing that, and then most recently, I see there's definitely an upward trend about picking up the the cybersecurity aspects, right? Securing data and the digital workflows and things like that. So it's definitely picking up, but with the pandemic, I think there's been a rush to digitize.
Absolutely. No, that makes complete sense. And did you see, I think there was another large scale security breach that happened last night. Did you
meat packing, right? Yeah, the
meat packing.
Yeah, no, it's and it was ransomware as well, right? So these kind of attacks you can actually buy as a service. So you have actors that are actually selling this, right? Monetizing off of ransomware as a service and things like that. And they target entities that have operational technology infrastructure, right? So they have no option but to pay. So it's very focused and very targeted, I think, series of attacks. And I think the one that hit the pipelines, right, dark side, they actually put up a apology statement on their portal on the dark web, saying that they didn't intend for the social consequences, and in future they will only target entities that will not have the social consequences, right, as a side effect. So these are like organized criminals, right? Organizations that actually target very specific entities to um, generate revenue.
Yeah. No, that's very scary stuff, and a very rapidly changing landscape. You could wake up like we saw with the pipeline situation, and there's no gas. Now we're seeing with the meat packing thing. You could wake up and,
Yeah.
and I mean, this is kind of a separate topic, but it's all related. But we're also seeing all these global supply chain issues. And that's just making things worse, like these hacks. And then, you had the what was it, the strait that got clogged up? I forgot which strait. I know it's like over by Egypt and North Africa area. I forgot what it's called.
I think it
Yeah.
was the Suez Canal.
Yes, Suez
Canal.
Canal. Yes,
Yeah.
the Suez Canal. Like, all these, and then there's like the chip shortages. Are you following the whole thing with the chip shortages?
I heard about that, but I didn't actually look too deep into it. What is that about?
Yeah, when the pandemic first hit, so all right, so the chip game is very interesting, right? When you're like building your iPhone or building your car or whatever, you get your chips and your products can be built in a week. But to manufacture chips, just to set up the facility to manufacture a chip takes like 18 months. So when the pandemic hit, I think before they really start manufacturing the chips, they take in the orders and then they say, hey, we're going to have production. There's chips for computer vision. There's chips for your regular computer. There's all kind of chips to do kind
Any
of things.
smart device, basically.
Yeah, so they specify what they're going to build things for. And then there's certain industries like the car industry, right? The car industry didn't know how they were going to come out of COVID, so they didn't really put in their orders. And then now, maybe coming out of COVID, there's a lot of demand for cars, and now they have their new models that they need chips for, but they didn't put in those orders with the semiconductor manufacturers or the chip manufacturers, semiconductor chip manufacturers, same thing for those out there. So they didn't put those orders in, and now the chip manufacturers are making. So it's not every industry that's really being affected by this. It's just certain industries they're having a chip shortage, like cars. I know automakers is really at the top of that list, and there's a few other industries, like chip makers for like gaming and like Nvidia and AMD and like 5G chips.
There are spaces that actually rocketed during the pandemic, right?
Exactly,
there was like a lot of usage there.
Yeah. So there's areas of there's areas that's doing really well, and there's areas that has a shortage, and that's why, because they didn't get those orders in, and so the manufacturer has to recalibrate their whole manufacturing system to produce those chips, and that's not something that happens overnight. So once again, when Apple gets its chips or GM gets their chips, they might build a car in the week, but to recalibrate a whole
supply chain, right, that's impacted, and how it affects and the different parts of your supply chain, right?
Yeah.
These are things that I think you live, you learn, right? Like pandemic, everybody is like learning through it. Just like how, when WannaCry and NotPetya came out like 4 years ago, I think, right? That hit the world, right? It was like a global crisis at that point. But now I think about recent studies showed like more than half of the entities seem prepared for ransomware because they know what the impact is, right? Again, not where we should be. There's definitely a lot more work that needs to be done. But I think a lot of this is like you learn through hindsight, right? And then if you're in that space and you're vulnerable, you want to be in a better off position to kind of withstand and be resilient to those kind of threat actors, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael Bloomfield from the group just mentioned that sanctions against Huawei, caused a lot of major issues too with chip supply. But I guess before we really get these things started, I just want to maybe hear what Mike has to say. Mike, would you like to unmute yourself and say your 2 cents?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. My name is Mike Bloomfield. I'm just at home. I'm the President Geek. So I own Tech Geek. We're an IT managed service provider here on that island. So I saw this was coming through about ransomware. We're very big into the game and protecting businesses. So wanted to come on. But yeah, the chip shortage is insane, we used to be able to purchase computers for clients. I would overnight a computer, have it. Now I'm going back to clients and letting them know, 4-6 weeks. We're looking for models that are available. Dell, if you look on Dell's pipeline, certain models are available and they pretty much come in and go right out. We're also do consumer electronics. So I don't know if you're familiar with Sonos. Sonos, good luck trying to get it. I could technically sell, like I have inventory that we keep for clients because we do installs. I could technically go and sell that for double, because if you want a Sonos Arc, you're waiting until September at this point to get one. TVs, everything's being affected. And it was the dominoes that all fell at the same time, right? You spoke about the supply, the pandemic occurred. Then you talk about with the whole balloon of the crypto market and Bitcoins and everything else that went with it. And then that caused the original shortage with all the graphics cards coming out. Yeah. Automotive industry utilizing now computers and chips and microprocessors for everything, for how the cruise control, for the instrument clusters, everything is controlled by a computer, which the last I read, car manufacturers this year are looking to basically, as a fail-safe, they're going to start designing the new models with analog instrument clusters again, because if they can't get the chips, they need to be able to still just ship cars. Yeah. So you're basically going to have $100,000 car that's going to have back to an analog instrument cluster, because they can't get the chips to do it. And they honestly have zero clue when this is going to get back. They say it's like Jeffrey said, it's about 18 months to get another major, supply house up to produce chips. And that's basically what I think they're trying to do, is because the supply is outgrowing the demand. The supply is under the demand, and the demand is not going anywhere. Yeah.
No, thank you for that, Mike. That was some really good insight. And yeah, it's a crazy situation. But with that being said, I think we have the crowd mostly in. So I'd like to just get things kicked off, So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you again, Mike, for your input. That was great. I'm Jeffrey DeRose, director at the CSI Tech Incubator. This is Tech Talks. We have Asha Abraham with us. She is the principal architect of cybersecurity at HubSpire, and she also has a very extensive resume doing cybersecurity work within the financial industry, working with Fortune 500 companies, both as employee and with them as clients. So with that being said, Asha, I'd just like to give you the floor to introduce yourself and your background.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm Asha, a cybersecurity architect and an auditor. I started out over 20 years ago as a systems engineer, moved into security engineering over time. I was in the industry in an engineering capacity for about 12 years before I got into management consulting. And I now lead the cybersecurity service line at HubSpire, which is a MBE certified technology services provider. And as part of my role, I take care of everything that is relevant to cybersecurity, from strategy, governance, enterprise risk management to controls implementation and architecture, both internally and for our clients. And then in terms of what we do, our core areas of expertise include app development, both web and mobile. We do a lot of data visualization, business intelligence reporting. We do systems integration, and most recently, cybersecurity advisory and audit services. So that's, in a nutshell, my background and my role.
Yeah. I'm just going to give a fun fact about HubSpire. So since we have a New York audience, For those of you who have taken the train, maybe in the past couple of years, train or bus, if you see the new Omni system, HubSpire actually built that Omni system where you could pay to get on the train, where you could pay with your phone to get on the train or the bus. So HubSpire can really do large scale enterprise work. And I'm sure you guys see how flawlessly that thing works. So yeah, so great.
When you start taking the trains again.
Yes. I mean, some of us already are. I think people are commuting, you know, so yeah, so great intro, Asha, and yeah, great team at HubSpire. And let's get right into it. So just curious to know, you know, you have such an extensive background. How did you get your start in tech or cybersecurity?
You know, growing up, coming from an Indian family, I had two career choices. It was either engineering or medicine. And I chose engineering because I couldn't stand the sight of blood. It was very, very easy, actually.
No, that's fair enough. You know, I come from a similar background, you know, so I hear you on that. And, you know, what areas of cybersecurity do you specialize in, right? Cybersecurity is such a broad field. What areas do you specialize in?
So initially, I was building security technologies or security solutions, right? That's how I started in that field. I was very interested. Like back in the day, cybersecurity wasn't as distinct or even glamorous, right? It was just part of the system administration or part of hygiene, right? Like access management or recovery or backups, and you know, a lot of the components that are included in cybersecurity services were just done as BAU. And the reason I shifted is once we were audited and we were crushed by this auditor when we thought we were really good, right? And when the auditor was done with us, we had like a bunch of work to do, right? To kind of fix a lot of the gaps, the control gaps he had identified. And I was like, wow, I want to be like him, right? And that's that's the trigger, I guess, for me to kind of start getting interested in actual security technologies and securing digital infrastructures and systems and solutions and things like that, right? So that's how I got into this space. And it's sorry, Jeffrey, I lost the actual question I was trying to answer.
Oh yeah, and I was just asking, like, what areas of cybersecurity do you specialize in?
Right, so that's how I started. But then, you know, as I got into management consulting, right, it's you know, it's like a job within a job. So what you do changes, who you work for changes, and what you're actually helping the clients with change, right? And because I was part of the cybersecurity advisory services, it was always cybersecurity challenges. So you end up kind of helping the clients with whatever they're struggling with, right? I've helped clients design security technology solutions, right? Evaluate vendors in that space. I've done cyber risk assessments to kind of give them a view of where they stand today in terms of, you know, their risk posture. I've done compliance initiatives to help them comply with regulatory mandates that they came under. I've helped them through change management, right? Like a lot of these security technologies are so horizontal. They touch many parts of the enterprise, right? So making sure that all of the different pieces are playing well together, right? It's a lot of communication. It's a lot of change management. It's a lot of herding cats, right? Getting people moving forward in the same direction, right? So it's really not rocket science, but you know, the areas I specialize in is really enterprise level risk management, governance, cybersecurity strategy, controls, design, implementation, support, assessments, regulatory compliance mandates, all those kind of things that, you know, if you're a business entity in a digital economy that you have to worry about, you know,
okay,
we have to help you with it.
Yeah. No, it sounds like, you know, you have a lot going on and a lot of moving parts, and that's cybersecurity, right? There's so much to it. So with that being said, I think that's a good segue, right? Can you maybe just walk us through, like, what are some of the core cybersecurity principles, right? What are some of the core foundational things you need to do to, like, you know, just keep yourself protected?
Yeah, sure. See, first thing I think is understanding that, you know, it's cyber breaches or cybersecurity breaches are going to be inevitable, right? Because it's a matter of time. It's not if you'll be breached, it's like, when are you going to be breached, right? Like, given enough effort, anything can be breached, right? And if you operate under that principle and you accept that fact, then you can actually start creating informed response plans to being or increasing the resilience, right, within your areas, right, within the businesses you support. Now, for that, you need to understand what your mission critical assets are. Like, what are your revenue generating work streams, right? What are your business processes that are key to ensuring that you're a viable business entity, right? What are those, right? What are the data flows that support it? Like, how, what kind of data do you use? Where does that flow across your enterprise, right? Where do they sit, right? And what are the infrastructure components that support those mission critical business processes and applications, right? So you have to kind of figure that out, right? Top down, right? And then map it to the infrastructure components, and then understand the threats that they're vulnerable to. Like, what is it that you are concerned about protecting yourself against, right? Like, what is the threat? And in terms of like the impact it could have on your assets across, the CIA triad, like, are you afraid of a business service disruption or a product disruption? Are you afraid of fraud or compromise of regulated data sets or stolen intellectual property? What is it? What is the cybersecurity risk that, or the loss event scenario you're trying to prevent, right? And which of those assets are these vulnerabilities open, like, how are these vulnerabilities affecting the assets, right? And then you can figure out, how do you best protect against that specific risk or loss event scenario, right? What are the controls you need? Like, if it is breach of sensitive information or regulated data sets, then you need to encrypt, you need to monitor and log activity that's happening against that data set. You need to employ multi-factor authentication or strong authentication mechanism, so you're only allowing authorized access and things like that. So depending on the risk scenarios you want to protect against, you can then figure out, how to build your cybersecurity strategy, basically, right? What do you protect best? Or, not everything deserves to be protected the same way. And security or to secure only has meaning when they're used as attributes of something that has value, right? So it is very time boxed, right? Like an asset could be valuable today, and it could depreciate 3 years from now. You're not going to apply the same level of security controls on it 3 years from now that you would probably do today, right? So you have to kind of make sure this is a cycle. There is a feedback loop that's built into your process, so that you're monitoring your environment to make sure that your controls are evolving the way your business is.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And I think, you're kind of talking at the enterprise level, and that makes sense, right? But how can we bring that down to small business and home level, right? What are maybe some of the core things that someone with a small business, or just someone at home that just want to keep, their finances protected, or, their kids safe online, etc.?
Yeah, it's the same set of principles, right? It's just the scale that is different. And I know there's actually a guidance from NIST for small businesses, right? I think it's called the Interagency Report. If you just Google NIST Interagency Report or cybersecurity for small businesses, you will find that guidance, right? It'll tell you what the areas that you need to focus on are, like, asset management. You need to know what your assets are, where your data is, right? What those data flows look like. Patch management, make sure that, you patch your operating systems, right? You have backup, right? Especially in this age where ransomware is only going to keep increasing, you need to make sure that your backups are recoverable, right? So testing strategies, making sure that, you follow the 3-2-1 backup rule, which is like, you need to have at least 3 copies of your data that is important to you, that you want protected, 2 different medias, and at least 1 offline. So, in terms of personal or small businesses, make sure you enable, I back up my data to both the Google Drive and iCloud, right? And I have it on my local disks, right? I have a local disk, and some of the sheets I have hard copies, right? Things that matter to me. So, wherever you're using your personal information, use multi-factor authentication possible, like online banking, right? Social media.
I just want to jump in. Can you maybe just for the people at home, can you define multi-factor authentication?
Sure. So, authentication, like when we do real world interactions or business transactions, you actually see the person. You can actually establish trust pretty quickly, right? Like you have that. But on the digital realms, you can't, right? Identity has to be verified. Like when a computer talks to another computer, there has to be mechanisms built to verify identity. And that is basically what authentication is. It's verifying the identity. And to make sure that, identity verification is strong, you have multiple factors that can be leveraged. The most common ones are the knowledge factor, which is using something Usernames and passwords fall into that category. And that is the weakest way to authenticate somebody, because you can share passwords, you can use weak passwords, or you can have compromised passwords. So if you just use that to authenticate someone to a online service or a portal, it's not the safest way or the most secure way to authenticate. Then you have additional factors like possession factors. This is using things things you have, right? So it could be your device, it could be your cell phone, it could be a key fob, right? All of those physical things that you have to have to authenticate on top of just the username and password. And then the other most common factor that is used for authentication is the inherence factor. That is basically who you are. That could be your biometrics, right? Things that don't change, but is very easy to use to to strongly authenticate or verify your identity, your retina scans, your fingerprints, your voice, facial recognition, right? And now that extends to behavior online. So most banking platforms actually use behavioral analytics, right? UEBA technologies to kind of baseline what your digital activity is like, right? What your normal patterns are. And then, if those are off, they flag it, they send you alerts, and there's triggers that alert them about anomalies in that behavior. So the more factors you use to authenticate, the stronger or the better protected that service is, right? So that's basically what it is. So when you enable 2 factors, you just don't log in with your passwords. You have to log in with, you have to put in your username, and maybe that site is designed to send you a push, and then you have to accept that on your phone, and then you log in, or they send you a time boxed one-time password and things like that. So you're using multiple factors to authenticate, and that's a better way to secure access to your digital assets, basically.
Yeah. That's great. And just to put that in a nutshell for people at home, right? So it's pretty much saying, like, for your emails, for your bank accounts, anything where you have an account, like, you use multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, and that's, even apps on your phone, right? It's your banking apps that you have on your phone. You have so many different apps that you use, right? Health tracker, like your walk, for your run, for your workouts, for your sleep monitoring, all of that, all of those apps, make sure you're using 2-factor authentication for it. So if your phone is lost, nobody can access all of the apps on your phone. you know, that's the whole idea. So wherever you have two-factor and it's using your personal information, make sure you enable 2FA. And the thing with 2FA is when you enable it, make sure you have the backup code. So in case you lose your phone, you have ways to kind of go back and log in and change your, you know, the device that is registered with that service or app.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. Yeah, backing up your data is key. Then I think with kids, like both my husband and I are in tech, right? But we've never actually used parental controls, right? And my boys are 12 and 14. It was communication, right? We have to kind of educate them, you know, obviously based on their ages and what they understand, but you have to talk to them, right? You have to keep the communication channels open, and they have to be able to police themselves and each other, right? So they need to know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. They need to know what the boundaries are. It's like letting them loose in the world, right? When they're not prepared. So I tell them the same thing. The internet is like a world, except it's digital, right? There's a lot of bad actors in there. Not everybody's going to have your best interest at heart, and you have to kind of know, you know, how to protect yourself. And if you're not sure, that's where we are. Like, that's what, you know, come to us. We'll help you make those decisions, but you need to actually make sure they know what's good, what's not, and what's dangerous, and expose them to stories that I think that add value, right? Like cyberbullying. You should know, they had contracts when they were given social media accounts, when they were given devices, right? Just so that they understand what the expectations are, right? And both from us and from them. And if there's consequences, if they breach the contract, you know, they lose the privilege. So you know, it's security is really a matter of incentives or consequences, right? It's one or the other, because there's always a trade-off, right? And you, like, you know, and our tolerance levels may be different, right? Each one of us have different tolerance levels, but we need to make informed decisions. That's the key, right? We need to understand, you know, and today data is like utility. It's like, you know, powering, you know, the lights that power your.
Data's the new oil.
Yes, it is that, right? Like you're going about your life with a supercomputer in your hand that fits in the palm of your hands, right? Information is commodity. Like anything you want to learn, you can actually learn, right? You just Google it, right? A lot of it. I mean, not everything, but you know, so the thing is, make sure that the decisions you're making, the risk-based decisions you're making, is informed. And it's within your tolerance levels, right? Your risk tolerance levels.
Okay, you know, that makes complete sense what you're saying, and just to segue a little bit, right? I think something that the people at home might encounter a bit, if you could speak upon, is one, maybe talk a little bit about encryption, right? So there's the element when you're talking about two-factor authentication, that is accessing data, right? But then there's sending data, right? Sending someone a file with your social security number on it, sending somebody a file with like your date of birth and maybe your bank account information, right? So can you maybe just talk about a little bit about encryption, and then maybe just a little bit about even phishing, right? I think people need to know about encryption, and people also need to know how to protect themselves from phishing scams or people trying to like social engineer their way into, like, you know, your inbox, or try to finesse you out of some passwords, like acting like they're AT&T or something. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the best practice with encryption is obviously you want to make sure that anytime you're sharing information that can uniquely identify your SSN, your tax information, or like things like that, you want to make sure it is protected, right? And it is only accessible to people that you've authorized, right? So there are many tools that's available. I think you have, and the thing is, if you use personal laptops at home and if it's lost, you don't want to be compromised, and you have personal information stored on it, I think there's operating system level encryption tools out there, right? You obviously You can apply that at the disk level. You can apply that at the operating system level. You can apply that at the file level, right? Depending on the operating system you're using, whether it's Windows, whether it's Mac, there are different tools that actually work across those different platforms, right? But end of the day, the thing is, as best practice, try and audit your data, right? Like if you don't need it, don't leave it on your laptop or on your devices or in the cloud, right? Like if you have a specific transaction that you had to share this information for and the transaction is done, you don't need that data there, don't keep it there, right? Like don't leave it in your emails, don't leave it in your hard drives. If you have say if you have like a sheet with information that, I guess.
I have an example. Like myself, when I first started working with the college, I had to send over like my bank account information and stuff like that. And when I sent that over, I tried to have the document encrypted. And once they got their information, I deleted it right after, just for the exact reason you're saying, right? Like, you don't need your private information that's floating on the internet or floating on, whatever, just delete it.
It reduces your exposure, right? Like what you're exposed to. So if you don't need it, leave it, have it deleted. And there's many tools that actually, depending on your platform and this, online, there's other tools that you can actually use for secure messaging, right? But encryption is one of it. But the thing is, don't retain data that you don't need, right? Like unless you're working in like some legal areas where you need by law to preserve communications and things like that. If that is part of your business model or your service offering, then obviously you cannot delete anything anytime. But regular day-to-day operations, the less is better, because then you have less to protect and apply controls over, right? And then phishing and spear phishing and social engineering hacks. The thing is, it's getting so sophisticated, right? And it's so targeted. It's really hard to be 100% protected against it. It's just, they're that good, right? But the thing is, I think it comes with practice, right? If you're like constantly being there's simulations that's available, but for small businesses and personal areas, Google's really good with having some of the security features I really like, where they test, like, if you're sending it to somebody outside your organization, it actually comes up with a flash warning saying this person is outside. Did you really intend to send this out there? And things like that. But they do great spam filtering and things like that. But it's really being conscious about the possibility. Don't click on anything that you're not expecting. So, when I get forwarded a bunch of stuff, right, all the time, and most of these are well-meaning things from my friends or network, folks in my network, social network. And I don't click on anything, right? I ask them, what is this, right? And they have to explain to me what this is and why this is something that I would be interested in, right? Like clicking, that's how they spread malware, right? So that's how they download a payload to your computer, whether it's your device. Jeff Bezos' phone was compromised.
I remember that.
A WhatsApp link, right, that he clicked on, and it was a Saudi prince that engineered that hack, right? So what I'm saying is, be very conscious about what you're clicking on, right? Because that's how they can actually download something and control your device, right? And then your phone is really a tracking device. It has everything that is personal to you in there. Like, it tracks your location, right? It knows all of the contacts. There's data aggregation and collection services out there that monetize off of our data, right? Even though you think you're being private and you're being safe and not sharing, oversharing, you sign up for loyalty programs, or you register for subscription services online, so that you get, things delivered to your house on a periodic basis, all of that data can be aggregated to kind of uniquely identify you. And based on your phone usage, it can also track and figure out who you spend the most time with, right? So all of that data, right, is being leveraged to build your consumer profile. It's like profiling on steroids, right? So what I'm saying is be smart about the data that you're sharing. And most of the time when you share on social media, understand that all of that is public. There is no secrets on the internet, and the internet never forgets, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever you're sharing on the internet, you have to be comfortable with it being public. And you can have all of the the right privacy settings so that you think you're sharing it only with a close group of friends or a subset of the circle of friends. It doesn't matter. Once it's out there, it's out there, right? Even Snapchat is supposed to be disappearing pictures or texts or messages, but they save that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the context in which you have to operate. And that's what I tell my boys. Like when we were growing up, we weren't this digital, right? Our lives weren't this on, we didn't live our lives online like this. And we were allowed to make mistakes, but our kids are not, right? If they do something stupid, that'll come back to haunt them like 20 years, 10 years later, right? So they have to be very smart about what they do online, even silly things like liking a comment that may be controversial, right? So you have to be able to talk to them and, educate them. Make sure that they understand the risks, right? That's there. And then the other thing is data poisoning, right? So when you share information about yourself on platforms, just, not like a state service or a federal service and nothing like that, but, social media platforms and things like that, you don't need to actually tell them your real birth date or your real address or your information that can be used to uniquely identify you. You can fake the data points, right? That's actually called data poisoning, right? So this way it's cookies. There's a question, wipe out all cookies from a phone. There's quite a few questions.
We're going to come back to the questions at the end. I just want to keep the conversation flowing.
Yeah. So yes, there's a bunch of, cookies definitely track behavior, right? And that's what they use to market services, right? It's like marketing agencies actually use all of this information to make sure that the ads they show you are targeted and applicable and relevant to you and in that time and space. So yes, you are being tracked. That is the truth of the world we live in, right?
Yeah. And those are all some great points. And before we get into Q&A, I maybe just want to ask a few forward-thinking questions. So with all that being said, right, the cybersecurity landscape is crazy right now. It's so advanced. Can you maybe speak to, because I know you guys work with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Can you speak a little bit about, how AI is impacting cybersecurity, both from the bad actors and the people trying to keep us safe?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because see, the thing is, data we generate is just so much data that it is it's not humanly possible to process all of that in a timely manner, right? And apply the right context and with which you need to kind of act on that data and make decisions on that data. So, AI, there's definitely trends that AI is going to get increasingly leveraged and become a critical factor in being able to build an effective cyber response strategy, right? Because machines can do all of that heavy lifting. They can process data at machine speed, right? They can identify patterns. They can actually mine data to kind of figure out trends and make predictive analysis possible, right? So they can detect anomalies, right? They can learn and mine the data and then figure out what's not right based on the data that you the model that the AI is using. So you have to be able to augment both those strengths, right? The machine learning, the algorithms that can be taught to mine through that data, but it's the human analysis, the people that have to act on that data. So the machines are used to filter out the noise, but the humans can then look at insights from that data and make intelligent decisions, can figure out, like, and even AI or machine learning can be used to kind of visualize insights from the data, right? Like instead of having an analyst sit there and review thousands of rows of data, which is not possible, you can throw a lot of bodies at it, but use machine learning algorithms to kind of visualize or dashboard that data, insights from that data. And then a human analyst can look at it and understand what to do, what this data is telling, and then act in an intelligent way. Right?
Yeah, I want to give the crowd an example just to make it a little low level. So when she's talking about like, AI being able to predict things, right? Let's just say like, hey, once a week you check your bank account for like 5 minutes at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And then all of a sudden, like, there's activity on your bank account at 3 a.m. The bank has AI software that's saying, hey, this person never checks their bank account at the time. Maybe there's something fraudulent going on. And then that's when you get that text. Right. So like that's literally AI working in the background, helping keep your stuff safe. So I want you to continue what you're saying. I just want to give people like, just a real world low level example of like, how AI works. Sometimes we're throwing around AI and predictive analytics, and that's,
Yeah. No, that's basically what it is, right? It is using a lot of different attributes that add context to a transaction, right? So you logging into an application, right? Just without the context, it looks normal. It seems normal, right? But you doing that in the night at 3 a.m. from, say, Japan, when you live in New York and you've just transacted 3 minutes ago, it just doesn't add up, right? And those things, there's no human that is sitting there looking at every transaction on a banking app that has thousands of users, right? It has to be machine driven, right? So that's the beauty of using those kind of algorithms. It can actually filter out the noise and identify anomalies that should be acted on or alerted on.
Yes, that makes complete sense. And let's maybe talk a little bit about the future of cybersecurity. So I know we were talking the other day, and I really think, I think maybe we could all agree that the future of the world is really going to be dictated by who can control technology, who's producing the best technology, who's creating the best technology infrastructure, et cetera. What does like the future of cybersecurity look like? Just from like even just like a hiring standpoint, I think like the U.S. needs to like build up like a huge army. Like I don't know how many coders like China and India is producing a year out of their university system. But I feel like, maybe the US really needs to ramp that up, and not just in the software engineering side, but also in the cybersecurity side.
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna grow exponentially in this space, right? Only because we're shifting that way. It's a digital economy. The digital technologies are so integrated into our everyday lives that we are so dependent on it, and that actually makes us a lot more vulnerable than we used to be, right? There's so many vectors, like homes are smart now, right? So baby monitors are being hacked, right? For crying out loud. Oh my God. So, so the thing is, cybersecurity talent is going to be key, right? They're going to be the ones that are protecting the world and our lifestyles. And it's not it's a known thing now, right? It's not surprising. The thing is, back in the day, IT, like, some cybersecurity or cyber risk management was, handed off to some set of folks within the IT department. That doesn't fly anymore. Today, it's a board level agenda. The C-level execs have to actually take on cyber risk management as part of their firm oversight role, as part of that function, right? So it has that level of visibility. C-level execs are on the hook to make sure that security is part of the design of how they operate institutions and business enterprises. So I don't think it's changing anytime soon. It's only going to get, I think going forward, we're going to have to shift to a more proactive model. I think we're still in a lot of, we think about this reactively, right? We think about this in terms of like hindsight, like, you see something happen, bad happen, and then you're like, oh, that could happen here. Now let me try and fix it, right? Before that happens here, right? So we're very reactive, I think, in our response strategies now still. But going forward, I think we're going to get a lot more proactive, and you're going to actually see enterprises, they're going to have to start building their resilience, right? Like being able to recover and resume operations, the most in a most cost effective way is going to be key to staying viable in tomorrow's world, right?
Yeah.
Like, breaches are going to happen. So you're going to be hacked, or, but what are you going to do after? How are you going to come back up? Are you going to come back up? Right? That's the question. Are you prepared for it? Right? So I think, going forward, if you're not, then that challenges your business viability, I would think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, cybersecurity risk is huge. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, how with, large enterprises, how cybersecurity is a conversation at the board level. Now we're seeing that with the US, right? Biden just signed an executive order around cybersecurity, and he also just assigned like a new cybersecurity like national director. I don't know which agency he's in, or they're creating a new agency. But just everything you're saying is just so correct, and everyone needs to be taking cybersecurity so seriously.
Yeah, no, you have to like look at all of the hacks that we're being hit by, right? One after the other, right? And it's only going to go, and this is just the way the world is. And the banks are really good at protecting their digital assets, which is because they've been doing this for a while. They know that they've been operating in the digital space for a while. They move money digitally, right? They've been doing that for a while. So actually banks are capital markets, they're compared to the other sectors, I think are a lot more mature because they've been doing it. They've been thinking about protecting digital assets and operating in a digital space a lot longer than some of the other sectors like healthcare or schools or, supply, like,
U.S. infrastructure, the supply chains.
The critical infrastructure plants, yeah.
That's actually another conversation. I maybe just want to bring up this point, then we could get into Q&A. But do you have any thoughts on that, right? Like, I know the last couple administrations have been kicking the bucket down the road with the whole, like, not just upgrading our infrastructure, but protecting our infrastructure. And it's always been, what's the word I'm looking for, right? Like a what if scenario about, like, somebody hacking the infrastructure. And we've seen that with the Colonial Pipeline. We've seen that with the meatpacking thing recently. We've seen that with SolarWinds. How do we protect our critical infrastructure in this country?
See, I think, it's like I said before, right? It's going to be really hard for an organization to be fully covered against all possible cyber threats, right? That's why I think it's more important to kind of focus on being cyber resilient, right? You need to be able to map your mission critical processes, your crown jewels, your data, right? In order to identify areas that require enhanced security measures. And the thing is, when your core business service is around supplying meat, you're not going to be good at figuring out your data landscape. And those, you have to think about obtaining, strategic consultancy services, or, if you need help. And tooling is going to be important, right? Like we were talking about, like analytics. These are advanced security toolings, right? That you will need to monitor your environment. Those tooling, that technology requires skilled people that can actually develop, implement, monitor, manage your security tooling within your areas, right? Use managed services there, right? Because that's not your space. But you can actually have security experts monitor your infrastructure and analyze incidents for you 24/7, right? Awareness training for your C-level by role, for your C-levels, for your developers, for your end users. You can have your engineers actually trained on privacy or security by design principles. So security is actually built into your product or your service, right? So it's not a bolt-on at the end that you have to then spend a lot more money and time and resources to fix or address. And then, you know, audit and test your controls to see how effective they are. Do that on a continuous or you know,
regular basis
cycle. Yeah, because this is not a once and done thing, right? Because everything is so fluid, right? Your business evolves, your control effectiveness change over time, and you know, you have to be able to kind of keep on top of it, at least for the subset of infrastructure and services that allow you to stay viable as a business entity. For that, you need to protect, right? And there's many controls, there's industry standards and you know, control frameworks you can leverage to kind of figure out, you know, what set of controls should I apply for this specific risk scenario and things like that. But yeah, I think identifying your crown jewels is key. Then maintaining a clear view of, you know, the evolving threat landscape and how that could apply to you, and then deploying the controls that effectively reduce that loss event scenario, right? Either the frequency with which it can happen or the magnitude of that event if it were to happen. If you can have controls that mitigate either those things, I think you'll be good to go. And it's not something that you can guarantee, right? That's the thing about cybersecurity. It's just being able to manage the risk.
Yes, you know, I just want to piggyback on that. Interestingly enough, I actually wrote a investment article almost like 6-7 years ago about cybersecurity, and the premise of my article was just pretty much that cybersecurity is going to be a never-ending war.
Yeah.
You know? You're just going to keep spending, keep hiring. The bigger you go, the bigger you become, the more of a target you become. The bigger your brand becomes, the more of a target you become. And that was just pretty much like the premise of like my investment thesis, and that has really panned out, especially during this pandemic. You know, but that was an article I wrote like 6-7 years ago. Okay, but last question before Q&A, because when I'm sometimes hearing about all these problems and challenges, now I hear opportunity, right? So for the people at home, let's say that, you know, like maybe they want to start building a career in cybersecurity. Maybe somebody wants to start a business in cybersecurity. You know, what are some tangible things that somebody can do just to get started, just to learn a little more, and you know, because that's opportunity, right, to get a job and start a business.
The thing is, right? See, this space, you have many options, right? It definitely helps to come from a technical background, because this is about how technology introduces risk into your environment, right? So being able to break it, being able to fix the broken parts is all key in you know, being a cybersecurity professional. So having that technical background definitely helps. But if you don't have that, there's many pathways that are not as technical, right? That's about risk management, right? But you have to be interested in technology. You know, it's you cannot be in this space if technology overwhelms you, or if you are not curious about, or you know, you're not curious about new tech, right?
That makes sense.
And the way it can impact your life, or an area, or a space, or an industry, right? You have to be able to kind of look at it at that macro level and understand how all of those different pieces fit together, right? Like even controls to protect against a specific loss event scenario, right? Let's talk about access controls, right? You know, there are definitely technical parts to it, but if you understand the objective, what is that control actually trying to achieve, and then apply that lens to it, somebody else that is technical should be able to explain it to you, right? And that's what auditors and risk professionals do most of the time, right? They are not the hands-on keyboard, they're not the technical experts, right? And none of us can be technically sound on every new technology that is out there, right? That is just not possible, right? You have to rely on the technical experts, the solution SMEs, and the vendors to educate you on the capabilities, right? On that product's capabilities and how, but you have to be able to ask the right questions, right? Like, this is the risk scenario I want to prevent. Tell me how this product is going to help, right? Show me, right? And if they can explain, and if this is, that's an area that you can actually explore. And then I think a lot of the folks that I've seen come into the space, it's connections. You need to know somebody, right? It's really, you learn a lot of what you need in this space on the job, right? Because what I started off working on is obsolete, like, now, right? What I learned, like the languages I learned to code in is archaic now, right? So none of what I learned to code, I actually worked on, right? Like what I learned in school, I didn't actually use, right? In real world during my work experience. But what I'm saying is network, right? Like make those connections, find a way to be useful to people that, you want to build a relationship with, or like, if you see yourself in a profession, like, you want to be in security audit, speak to auditors, find a bunch of auditors. Like LinkedIn makes it so easy for you to kind of target, right? Just like how you are monitored and you can be tracked, you can use LinkedIn to kind of focus and narrow in on the companies or the kind of careers you want to actually mold for yourself or shape for yourself, right? And then make connections with them, shadow them, talk to them, interview them, have them, take them out for a cup of coffee, right? Like, and learn about what a day in the life of them is like, and see if you can see yourself in that role, right? So I think that's important, Jeffrey. I think that is the most important thing. Anybody that is looking to get a foot in this space it's going to be critical, right? But of course, you have to have the drive. Technical background is definitely, an advantage, an edge.
Absolutely. That makes sense. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, just our professor in here, she does also mention that attending cybersecurity seminars and conferences are also a great way to meet and connect with people and learn. And she also mentioned that CUNY, and she mentioned John Jay, also have great cybersecurity programs. So that's, that's some good ways to start. So those are some definitely some really good points. We have another 30 minutes. So I kind of just want to jump into the Q&A because people have been asking a lot of actually really good questions. So I just want to say with the questions, I'll let every person just unmute themselves. I'm going to read these questions in order. So just give me a second to get to the top. And let's get to it. One moment. Okay, all right. So S. Kasim, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question out loud? You had the question about the laptops.
Yes, hi, how are you? My name is Shaq. My question is about, so I know you mentioned something about when you click on a link or something, or, you get hacked. Well, I don't want to say hacked, but you get hacked and then they're able to control your devices. So I believe it happened to me back in October. I clicked on a link from someone who I thought I knew, and all kind of things were happening to my phone, my laptop. So I took the computer to, it's been horrible. Like recently I saw something in my bank account, and it was like, my bank account was frozen from like days before. And it just showed only the transactions from those days. I called the bank. They were like, no, it's fine. I was like, no, it's not. I'm looking at it right now. But anyway, I took the phone and the MacBook to Apple, and they're like, well, our systems we don't get hacked. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they were like, well, we'll do a factory reset. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So now, does it still happen again? Because it's happened after that again. Like I've noticed my things happening that shouldn't be happening on the computer or on the phone.
Yeah, no. The thing is, right, if you factory reset, then it should be a clean slate, right? You're starting from scratch unless you have linked accounts, right? So because you're using the Apple ID to like kind of log in, and then that could then, if you have your settings so that you're sharing data across all of the devices that you're signed into, that and like if you've only reset your laptop but not your phone, then you could have ways where that is still there. Your account is probably then
believe it or not, the hack came from working on Upwork.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And just to add to what she's saying too, not just resetting your devices, but when you get hacked, you maybe need to do an audit of your emails. Like, what's in an email account, you need to reset your password, set up two-factor authentication for your emails. And also with people don't know this, but you can check the login activity for your emails. I know I had this like on my Outlook. Of course, they have their artificial intelligence software that can pick up when anomalies happen, but sometimes anomalies are happening, but the software isn't picking it up. But you can go and check the login activity. You can say like, okay, somebody in Colorado logged in at 3:00 today. I should change my password. So I would definitely say change your passwords on everything and set up two-factor authentication. If someone is trying to get into your account, they have to you're going to get notified before they even get in.
Okay. And there's a site, I forget, Pond or something like that it's called, where you can actually put in your email address and see if it has been compromised or if it is available, right? So
what is it called?
Hold on, let me see. I think the site is called Pond or not? Pond or not? Have you Pond? Have I been pawned? Hold on, I'll send you the link on the chat. Give me a second.
Okay.
I think Larry just posted the link.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Is it possible that your Wi-Fi connection can also be hacked, or is that something that's not very feasible?
I mean, there's definitely sniffers, right? That's out there. But the thing is, when you do transactions, online banking transactions, you have to ensure that you're using online credit monitoring and things like that, right? Most of the banks allow that, or like have that as a service, right? There's many services that actually monitor. Check your credit scores, pretty frequently. Like check your bank account activities, right? Those are things that those are the big areas that you want protected, right? So make sure that you stay on top of those, right? There's nothing funky going on there. So stay on top of that, right? And then listen, not everything, banking, health applications, social platforms, all those things warrant the enhanced level of security. But others, and then, as good practice, don't use those passwords on any other sites, change those passwords frequently. And then, what was I going to say? Yeah, two-factor, enable two-factor, make sure you follow the backup or recovery strategies there. Like you have to save those backup codes when you enable two-factor so that if you lose your phone or, whatever you use, you have a way to go back into your account and your app.
That is what I'm actually going through right now with GoDaddy. I don't have I don't know how to use the Authenticator app for some reason correctly. So for whatever reason, now I can't get into GoDaddy to update something with my domain. So it's been 3 weeks. They've asked me to send articles of incorporation. They've asked me to send my ID front and back. They've asked me for so many things that I'm like, at one point I was like, I don't even know if this is GoDaddy because I don't believe I need to have so much in order just to get back into the account. So, and it's been almost 2 weeks now and I still haven't heard back from them.
Yeah, no, I think when you host a domain, they have to have that level of scrutiny because, it's a domain that is out there on the internet, right? It's almost like a person there. It's like issuing a SSN, right? So they want to make sure that this is a real person because a lot of the times, there's fake domains and
there's bad actors trying to do fraud, faking like they own a domain, faking like they own a business to take over a domain and then, do bad stuff. So that's a very real thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was a little worried because I said, I can't believe it's 2 weeks and I sent everything and I still haven't heard from them. They wrote back one time and was like, oh, can you resend? we couldn't see the ID. Can you resend it again? So I resent it and I haven't heard back yet.
No, but
so.
make sure that you get their contact information, right? Like, and make sure that you're calling the service line that is on their website and things like that, right? You're going through legit channels, right?
Yes.
It's not just, you know, an email or like, you know, it's not somebody that is texting you the number and things like that, right? So
yes.
make sure you follow those legit protocols, right? There's the customer service hotlines or things like that, and then get to the person that's working with you through them.
Okay. So one other question I have, and this is it's crazy because everyone thinks that like, they're like, this can't be possible. Can your calls be redirected in the sense where it's like, when you call, if I pick up the phone to call someone and I'm calling them and the calls either bounce to, like it's being picked up from someone else that is not actually the person you want to talk to. And that person will definitely, a good example is like, I had to call, let's just say Verizon, right? And I have to call Verizon. I get through, I call the number, like you said, from the website. I do all that stuff, but the person on the other line is not Verizon. Is that even possible?
It could be. I mean, but the thing is, if you use a hotline published on their website, it should be their personnel that's answering the phone. So, you know, that's going to be highly unusual, I think, highly unlikely.
Okay.
Because that's their published hotline, right? Like Verizon is accountable for that, and I don't think they can publish something that is compromised, right? Like that wouldn't be published or available on their portal for long, because somebody would report this and it would be flagged. So that's highly unlikely for that to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Hey, this is Mike. Sorry to interrupt, but just one tip, because a lot of people fall for this. When you Google, like if you're Googling Verizon support, never click on an ad number, because hackers will actually buy ad space and then display their numbers until Google catches it. So if you search Verizon, so you always want to make sure skip the ads and go to the actual Verizon.com. Make sure you're on a secure site with the lock, and then call that number. Never click an ad number.
Yes, that is true, Mike. And yes, that's probably what it is then. You know, you're probably being redirected to a different site that is flashing Verizon there, but they're not the Verizon site. Thank you, Mike, for highlighting that.
Yes, and thank you for your question. That was such a great question. I just want to say, guys, just be mindful of time. You have like 15 minutes, and I just want everyone to get a chance to have a question. So let's just have quick questions and quick answers, if that's okay. Next question was from Jamel. Jamel, would you like to unmute yourself? Or I could ask a question for you. It's kind of simple. Okay, I'll ask for him.
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
The question was, I heard that my number was on the dark web, and I want to know how that it would affect me.
See, the thing is, most of our information at some point was compromised, right? But the thing is now, what do you use your phone number for, right? Like if you've registered, you probably want to make sure that, you know, you're using, monitoring all of the things that you care about, like your bank account, your credit score, anything that you're using your phone to kind of log into, right, as a service, right, or you're subscribing to, you want to make sure all of that is kosher, right? Because you're not going to change your phone number just because it is compromised. So I think, you know, monitoring, make sure that everything is as you expect it to be is the best you can do. You know, and the thing is, if it was a password that is compromised, you know what to do. You just change your password, right? And you have to do that as best practice anyways, right? You want to cycle through your passwords. You want to make sure you're using complex passwords. And when I say complex passwords, don't make it so difficult you forget to remember what that is. You know, so you use passphrases. That's like, you know, it's a favorite song. Just use the first the words in that you know, sentence of that song, or the lyrics of the song, right? And then figure out a way to add numbers to it and special characters, and there you have a complex password. And, you know, at least make it 12, right? Eight is something that can't, like there are brute force mechanisms that can hack a password in hours, if not minutes, right? So if your password is only 8 characters, it's not strong enough. At least use like 12 characters, right? So, you know, and make it like a sentence, right? So sentence that you remember, like I like planet Mars, or I come from Venus, or something like that, right? So it's something that is easy, and something, your favorite song, right? Whatever it is, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, whatever that is, right? And it's a lot more harder to compromise or hack. So, but with your phone, Jamal, I think, you know, best you can do is make sure that you're monitoring all of the high risk apps and services you're using with it.
Right. Yeah, I already do that. I was just making sure. So should I change? So my passwords for my bank accounts and all my like brokerage accounts and things like that, should they all be different? Because and we're changing them often. I'm starting to forget. You know, I'm really, you know.
I know it's not easy, but that's why, like, you know, the thing is, if you can actually use, actually there's a password manager, Authy, that, you know, you can use. It's like, you know, you just have one password to remember. It's just the password to get into that password manager. And it's like a password vault. All of the sites that you have, you can actually inventory that in that app. I don't personally use it because, you know, that's one place that if it's compromised, they have all of your
right.
access credentials, right? But there's definitely ways to do that. Like I actually have a hard copy and that I share with my husband. You know, it's like, I know I have about 75 sites that I have to remember passwords for.
Yeah, you know, I think she makes a good point, Jamel. Just to write it down, you know, try to memorize it by, you know, in your head is not easy, but if you just write it down, that'll make things a lot easier. But great question. Thanks for the question.
Don't leave it under your keyboard or visible spaces. It has to be protected like you protect your jewelry or valuables.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Ismail actually had a really good question. Ismail, if you want to ask.
Hey, you know, I don't want to take too much time from the crowd. Do you think the question is valid because I know we got like 10 minutes left. But my question is regarding single sign-on. Do you feel like it's more secure using a single sign-on for all your accounts, or does it actually make you more vulnerable because now you have one access point to all your credentials? I just wanted your opinion on that.
No. It's actually recommended practice, right? So this way you're removing the manual having to remember passwords away. And, you know, single sign-on, it uses federated IDs, right? Identities. So it's not your entire password, I think, that it uses. It's a hash of it, right? So the technologies that are used in it.
Can you just say what a hash is for the people at home? Yeah, people probably don't know what that is.
So it's almost like a code that represents. So like, you know, when it's like a subset of data that uniquely identifies your password, but it's not your password. So it's like
it remixes it, right? It represents your password with a different password. Maybe that's a simple way to say it.
Yeah, but it doesn't even use your entire password string. It's a subset of it, but it hashes it in a unique way that this hash knows when it's your password, right? And hashes are very difficult to break because it's like, it's easy to hash things, but it's very difficult. It's typically very difficult to, hashes uses like, encryption technologies.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is an encryption technology, but it's very hard to reverse engineer. That is the beauty of hash. Encryption technologies, most of the time when it is used to encrypt, you have to be able to decrypt it, right? You need to be able to, like, you know, when you encrypt it, you're like garbling it so that it is not readable. It doesn't make sense. But then when it gets to the right authorized entity, that person has to decrypt it and make sense of that data, right? For it to be useful. But hashes don't work like that. Hashes are easy to encrypt, but very hard to decrypt, right? It's almost like breaking glass. You can break glass easily, but it's hard to kind of put that glass together from the pieces. So hashes use, like, the strong hash algorithms are like 256 bits. It's just, there's ways to make sure that you're using the right set of protocols to apply the hashes. So what I'm saying, Ismail, is that the SSO technologies are very mature, and it's actually a recommended practice to move away from the password authentication mechanisms now.
Yes,
Great, thank you.
Great question and great answer. Next question was from Jur. I hope I'm saying your name properly. I don't know if Jur is still in here. I think Jur left. But Jur asked, let me see. Sorry, I just lost the question.
I think Jur said, when you say delete, does it mean delete from?
Oh, no, that was his first question. Okay, here's the question. In regards to the security of apps, will deleting an app and its data permanently delete all tracking? Does this action mean that the app no longer tracks you through your phone, or are there other measures you would suggest to take? I'm in the process of deleting old accounts from my phone.
Yeah, old accounts. Hold on, I'm trying to find this question. Yeah, removing that app from your phone, it deletes all of the
tracking
information that's applied to your phone, but you don't know if it's been backed up by the service provider. Right? Like app has, like, I don't know, talk about an app, Chase, right? I use Chase for banking. If I delete the app, yes, it's gone from my phone for sure, but Chase has probably got a backup, right? Like in case I deleted it by mistake, there has to be a way for them to kind of, actually, the app level data, I'm trying to think, it's probably going to be metadata about the app that is probably stored at the service provider, not the database kind of information. It's probably linked, and it feeds off of those, I'm trying to think about Chase, right? So Chase has the online digital services, right, that allow you to kind of manage your accounts online, right? Now that account information has databases and things like that store the data about your financial account. And it tracks the movement of money from one account to the other and all of that good stuff. But the app is just an API that feeds into that system, that big system. So when you delete that app from your phone, yes, it's deleted from your phone, but the Chase organization may have some level of metadata that they're tracking to understand mobile usage, for example, or how you're leveraging their app services and things like that. So yeah, it is gone from your phone for sure, but it is still, there's some level of tracking that is happening at the org or the service provider that's providing you with the app. And then he said, I'm in the process of deleting old accounts from my phone. Yeah, you should, purge that. Like anything that is not needed that you can purge, less is better, less to protect.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was good. That was a great, that was a good question, even though Jory isn't here. That was a good question for everyone at home. All right. So I want to just give the last two questions because I know it's about to be 7:30 and I know you got to go, Asha. So Orit actually asked one of the questions I wanted to ask during our talk, but I didn't get to it. She stated, no entity is fail-proof, but which country or countries has a good model for cybersecurity? Or excuse me, which countries has the model for cybersecurity framework or policies? Yeah, so are there any countries that you see out there that has a really good cybersecurity framework or policy? And you can just give a quick answer. I know.
Believe it or not, US is pretty high up there.
Really?
Yeah, like, the frameworks we have, the NIST standards and things like that, we're pretty high up there, right? But China, Russia is just as advanced. UK is really good too. But I think UK has a better posture when it comes to privacy compared to the US, right? Because I think privacy for Europeans is like a human right, right?
Yeah.
We don't think about privacy that way here. So when it comes to privacy, that's why GDPR was initiated there, right? They had the data protection rule regulation long before even GDPR was in place, right? So I think, and I think, Jeffrey, we talked about this before, like, it's the countries that have a handle on their cyberspace that is going to be the global, the superpowers, going forward. So I think, we're definitely up there. And then I think Russia, China, UK comes to mind.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm just gonna ask one more question, and then maybe we gotta set up like an Ask Me Anything with you for everyone to just come with all their cybersecurity questions or problems. But the last question is from Alan. Okay, Alan's still in here. Alan, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So, well, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
So, okay, perfect. Great. My question was, currently I'm in the beginning of my career as a cybersecurity expert. So I just completed an internship at Microsoft, and I have this cybersecurity alias now, and I'm like excited to use it. But while I was there, again, it was saying I didn't know how to code. I wasn't taught how to code, but it was the processes and like how the whole entire infrastructure worked is what I learned. Where can I develop those skills in a like a role, specifically in a role? Like it doesn't have to be in one space like front end, back end. It just like any role.
So Alan, what excites you about this space, right? What do you like about this space? Where do you see yourself actually specializing in? Like, what do you want to explore more, or learn about more?
Well, where I want to learn more is basically what's the best way to stop hackers? Because at a very young age, I was exposed to getting hacked, quote unquote, because I downloaded a virus on my computer, and I was a little kid. I was like 6 years old. So I was so mad. And I've honestly held on to that grudge. And, that's kind of what's been driving me. I want to prevent that. I don't want to see people lose their businesses. I don't want to see people lose their personal information, like their God-given right. So that's what fuels me, to be honest, to be in the cybersecurity space.
So, and use some of the lessons learned from your experience, right? So what did you do when you were hacked, right? And were you safer after that, right? After that was applied. The thing is, you can actually, the thing is, because you're starting out, I think figure out, like, if you want to stop hackers, you have to be able to think like one, right? You have to be able to hack like one, right? So are you actually setting up or enabling yourself to kind of hack, say, simulated environments, right? Do I think there's a bunch of tools out there, right, that you can actually download and use for free that allows you to kind of figure out what the holes are in its design, right? And then you try and like break it. And then once you know and get comfortable about breaking a specific technology, whether it's operating systems, whether it's mobile phones, whether it's communication technologies, right? Then you can actually start becoming or an advisor and say, hey, listen, this can be broken 10 different ways. Let me show you how you can protect yourself against that, right? So if you want to protect, you want to build a client base that you can help protect from hackers, you need to be a good hacker, right? Yeah. You need to be able to sell that and the value you add to the clients, right?
Very true. I 100% agree with you. Thank you so much. I'm going to let time for maybe another question go by. So thank you for that valuable knowledge, though.
Of course.
Yes. Great question, Alan. And actually, we kind of hit time, so I maybe want to wrap it up here. But I just want to say thank you so much, Asha, for, just coming in and giving us your time and giving us your knowledge. Thank you, Professor Gruber, for just stopping by and, showing us some love and, engaging. I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Thank you to NYC EDC for helping sponsor, for our promotional partners, excuse me, they didn't sponsor. NYC EDC, just want to give a shout out to Communitas Americas, Startups Magazine, and Driven Society. I know everyone in this room came from one of those places or our, regular incubator group. So just thank you to everybody. This has been a great conversation. Asha, I think I want to bring you back for an Ask Me Anything. I just think people have so many questions. So we'll set that up. So just thank you so much, everybody.
Having me.
I'm
so glad I made the time. This is amazing. I love the impact you're having, and the forum to kind of engage your community. This is just priceless. I'm so impressed. Thank you, Jeffrey, for making me a part of this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to get you more involved. You're a wealth of knowledge, and, you seem like you really enjoy this. So thank you.
I do.
And
thank you.
Yes. Okay. So we'll be sending a follow-up email. Asha, is it okay if we include your contact information if anyone has any questions or needs services?
And you can find me on LinkedIn too.
Excellent. Yeah. So we'll send a follow-up with Asha's contact information, her LinkedIn, HubSpire's website. And if anybody needs anything, feel free to reach out to her. If anybody needs anything, feel free to reach out to me as well. And yes, thank you again, Professor. I appreciate that, the love. And, maybe we should shoot you an email. Maybe we got to get you involved as well, So with that being said, thank you, everybody. I just keep saying thank you. I'm just a very gracious person. But have a great night, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.